When I think of data, I think like the main value is in how big it is. Is this accurate here?
If you take Llama, for example, Llama is an open source model from Meta. And so they have a 400 billion parameters, so that literally 100 times. The difference in output is not really that huge. So for simple tasks, let's say you have a text summarization, you just need a simple model. You don't need this huge state-of-the-art model. So DeFi has been big, but I think NFTs will come back. It seems like NFTs are dead. At least the face profile pictures are dead, for sure. I think good riddance, maybe. I remember this was March 16 when Bitcoin dropped 40%. That's called Black Thursday. The lockdowns happened. The stock market crashed. So went out, hustled hard, and made the company profitable by May 2020. In that 3 months, 3 or 4 of our biggest competitors with the most hype, they all folded. If those companies had continued, then there would be no Covalent today. And I said, okay, now is a good time to go raise capital, right? Because we have something. And at least at a seed stage, you can find other people who are prospectors and want to be in for the journey. We went out and did a raise for a little seed round and got a term sheet second week of March. And then COVID hit and the lockdowns happened. And the guy who had the term sheet blocked me on Telegram.
We are in Bangkok with Global Blockchain Show, and today I'm with Ganesh from Covalent. Welcome.
Mia, excited to be here.
I want to hear, well, first, let's set the tone for anyone that doesn't know. Tell me about Covalent.
Yeah. So Covalent is a data infrastructure project. So what we have is a decentralized protocol that captures blockchain data and makes it accessible. And you can use this data for all kinds of uses, like AI agents, for your taxes, for wallet applications, custodian applications, forensics, fraud, all kinds of insights into the data. So the core premise is that blockchains, you can write to the blockchain, you can execute transactions on the blockchain, but the whole premise of a blockchain falls apart if you cannot read from the blockchain. So that is the problem. How do you read? How do you make blockchain data accessible? Is the problem that we've been laser focused since day one at Covalent.
How did you get this idea?
So it's quite an accident. And I used to be in the traditional data infrastructure space, so the Web 2 space. And I'm from Vancouver. That's where my team is from. And it rains a lot in Vancouver. So one rainy Saturday, a friend of mine calls me and says, hey, there's a database hackathon. Let's go check out this hackathon. And it was sponsored by a blockchain company. Until then, I'd seen, this is during the 2017 ICO era. So I've seen blockchains, all the hype, but I mostly discarded it as just, hype and nothing of substance. And so, but I had nothing to do. So we went out and built this really slick kind of hack where you can pull out blockchain transactions into Excel. So just from my experience in the data space, Excel is basically the tool to go. It doesn't matter what kind of backend system you have. Your analysts will always want to use Excel. So Excel is a very versatile tool. So we built this very simple tool so you don't have to learn how to run a blockchain node or understand the transactions. Now, the caveat is that back then in 2017, blockchain transactions were very simple, like ERC20, there was no NFT, there was no DeFi, there was no GameFi. So very simple kind of transactions. But that promise, that glint of the idea where you can pull out the transactions into Excel is the genesis idea. So we ended up winning that hackathon and then said, hey, let's start a company. Let's commercialize this. Let's go to market. The timing was terrible because it was 2 years of a bear market. So no customers, no revenue, no product market fit.
What year was this?
This would have been end of 2017. So we started in 2018. So 2018, 2019, it was terrible. I had gone to Consensus in 2018. The conference, it was dead.
Wow.
It's like security token offerings, ICOs, everything was dead. There was no stable coins, no DeFi, nothing of that sort. It was quite a struggle. But yeah, that's the genesis idea. The word covalent comes from covalent bonds in chemistry. Not trying to give a chemistry lesson to our listeners here.
It's good for me to know because I mispronounced it, but I also have an accent.
It's all good. So covalent bonds is one kind of chemical bond. And so here the idea is we are binding databases and blockchains or Web 2 and Web 3 or centralized systems and decentralized systems. So that's the premise of the idea. So covalent. So on the front end, it looks like a Web 2 system. So you can use Excel, you can use regular Web 2 APIs. But on the back end, it has all of this decentralized magic.
Who uses Covalent the most?
So today we have hundreds of customers, mostly on the consumer use cases and the enterprise use cases. So if you were to start from the enterprise use cases, you have things like taxation. So Covalent gives you every single granular transaction of your entire wallet history. So you can figure out your cost basis and your tax liability. So that's one use case. We're very big in the wallet use case. So in the wallet use case, you want to get a list of your token balances and basically the spot prices. You want to show all of your NFTs. You want to show the floor price of these NFTs. You want to see what DeFi positions you have. So Covalent has an API for all of those use cases. So pretty big in the wallet use case. We're starting to see more of the long tail. So Ondo Finance is an example of an RWA project. Again, you want to find pricing for these real world assets. Thorchain is a Bitcoin bridge. So there's a swap. So that interface is powered by Covalent. And yeah, it's just like a can of tomato sauce and pasta. And you make lasagna, you make whatever you want. It's up to the developer, up to like the market's imagination. So today there's a few hundred customers. These are paying customers. So it's a real project with a real product market fit. So it's data. So data is
Of course, data will always be incredibly useful. I think like when people think of data and in today's world with AI and you being on chain, there's been, because I was earlier on the conversation on AI and like decentralizing AI, and the main issue was around personal data. There's a lot of tension around personal data. How do you see this? Because obviously like you're providing data, I guess, to the person, but I imagine you're also providing data to companies, right?
Let's take a step back and understand what decentralization really means in this AI landscape. So when people talk about decentralized AI, they typically mean decentralized training or decentralized inference. So those are the two aspects. But one overlooked aspect is decentralized data, which is how do you get the data to train these language models or whatever the model is, and how do you get that model to infer, which is run your queries, your prompts against that. So the data aspect is crucially important, because if you include biases, you include nefarious information, then your prompts are going to mislead you. And this is what we're starting to see. There were like classic examples of the Google Gemini model where you ask who is the first president of the United States. It gives you a Asian American president. So stuff like that is because you've embedded your biases. So the data is crucially important, garbage in, garbage out. And so that's overlooked. So in terms of what Covalent offers is that the data is the structured data that you use to train these LLMs is verifiable. So the entire provenance, the entire pipeline of data is secure. It's cryptographically secure. So that's extremely important to ensure that you don't have biases and you don't have manipulated data. There's nothing wrong with biases per se, because biases is just captures people's opinion, and expressing opinion is a First Amendment right. But you have to be able to disclose that, and you can't say live in a bubble, for example, right? So that is essentially the decentralized ethos of AI. Now, when it comes to private data, this is a genuine concern, because it's unreasonable to expect people to put like their social security number or their credit card balances on a public ledger. It just doesn't make any sense, right? We don't go out exposing all this stuff.
Some people might,
but maybe that's the future, but it's not the future we are in today. And so there's a lot of cool technologies that are out where you can join the publicly attested data, which is on the blockchain, with private data. So your private data, it never leaves the custody of your wallet. So one of the issues with data, that's why you have all these data breaches, is that you give up your data for training or for machine learning, and that's it. There's no way to take it back. You've lost custody. You've lost the plot. And so here, there's a way to join the data, use your private data and use the public data in a way where your data never leaves your phone or your custody or your wallet, and you still serve the needs. So there are some fringe applications today. If you use the new Apple 16, so they call it Apple Intelligence AI. So there, the LLMs are inferred on the phone. So your private data never leaves the phone. So that's, I think, the future. So this what we've seen so far, where you upload all your data to ChatGPT, That's not the future, right? Definitely there's going to be even simple rules like GDPR, where EU citizens' data cannot leave EU, and this whole thing just falls apart, right? And so that is the future, and I'm very excited for that.
That is incredibly interesting. Just the fact that it can be, it can remain on the phone, it can remain with the person. That is definitely like very reassuring. When you, when I think of data, I think like the main value is in how big it is, like how many participants, let's say. Is this accurate here? Does it play out like this, or am I misinterpreting?
It is correct, but there are diminishing returns. An example is like if you look how you benchmark these language models, it's a number of parameters. So if you take Llama, for example, Llama is an open source model from Meta, and so they have a 4 billion and they have a like 400 billion parameters, so they're literally 100 times. But the difference in output is not really that huge. So for simple tasks, let's say you have a text summarization. A text summarization, you just need a simple model. You don't need this, huge state-of-the-art model. And so these big models, like the 400 billion parameter model, it costs about $100 million to train. So it's quite expensive. And so because it has so many parameters, if you want to infer your prompt against that model, that is also expensive. When the results are more or less the same, why do you want to spend $2 for an answer when you can spend 2 cents? So there are limits to these models, depending on the task.
Mm-hmm. Other than wallets, what other parts of the industry could benefit from this?
From Covalent data?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think we're just starting to see what is possible with blockchain data. So most of blockchain use cases have been DeFi use cases. So this is like positions, anything that needs like a trustless system, right? So you're able to transact without a counterparty risk. So DeFi has been big, but I think NFTs will come back. It seems like NFTs are dead. At least the face profile pictures are dead for sure. I think good riddance, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe it's going to upset some of our listeners, but
it's all right. We love a hot take.
Yeah. So, but NFTs as a infrastructure, which is property rights and ownership rights, is I think crucial for society. So that'll come back in some form. If you look at like GameFi, where users' assets are on the blockchain, that's an example where we're starting to see a lot of traction. There's a game called Gunzilla, where Covalent provides some of the data there. So that has a lot of use cases there. The Ronin chain, they invented the play to earn mechanism. So that's players playing to earn. But they have this new variant called Pixel, which is now starting to get a lot of traction. So gaming is a big thing. There are more gamers than people who watch movies. So it's a bigger industry. So it shows you that how much opportunity there is. I would say, stablecoins is a massive use case. And if you see all the stablecoin adoption, it's all in Africa. They don't even know there's a blockchain because their currencies are hyperinflationary and stablecoins are, something more stable. All kinds of use cases. I think maybe this is a stretch, but if you think about how any regular application has a database, I think every app will have a blockchain at the back end at some point, if the need warrants. So I think the space is pretty big. If you look at internet native applications, right? So in the 90s, most of these applications were just copycats of what you saw in the real world. So you have real banking, and then you have online banking. You have real mail, now you have email, right? And so it's only until you got into like 2004, 2005, 2010, you started to see these internet native business models with social media, for example, Airbnb, for example. So it just like, it just you have to have crypto native use cases come up. We're not there yet, but mostly it's DeFi, NFT, GameFi, real world assets, stable coins. Those are the primary use cases today.
You've been in the industry as an active, like building in the industry like for a long time. And the industry changes like pretty much every month, if we want to take it to an extreme. But realistically, okay, every year it's slightly different. And, like sometimes we feel like very confident in the industry. I feel like now it's more stable. But I remember like years back, there was a sort of like extreme of like, oh, crypto is the future. Crypto is going to zero. There was no in between. At any point, did you feel like less motivated to keep going?
Absolutely. I actually almost gave up on Covalent. So we started the company in 2018, and 2 years in, so I come from a traditional Web2, startup culture, where in Y Combinator, for example, they say you have to hit your metrics, double-digit growth on a monthly basis. You have to talk to users and find revenue, product market fit, all the traditional stuff, right? And so here, all of that was thrown out of the window. 2 years in, we had something like a product, but it's not really a product if it doesn't solve a need. And the problem set was just our vision of these problems that would appear in the future, right? It wasn't real at that point. We just knew that this is going to be an issue. And so we built a product for a problem that it would have existed in 5 years, but wasn't the case then. And then, so no customers, no revenue. And then my wife's parents were asking me, what are you doing? More of the traditional, like go get a job and so on. Yeah. And so I almost, I was really at my bottom. And so that's when some mentors of mine said you should just, step out for a bit, gain some clarity, and then understand why you even started this, where's your conviction, understand the why of what you're building, and then come back. And if you cannot find the why, if you don't have a reason to truck along, then you should just give up, maybe go get a job or work on something else, right? Because the opportunity cost is pretty steep. Like, how many years are you going to spend on this before that it's a dead end? So that's when I went to Mount Everest and hit the base camp and went through that struggle there. So I'm a heavy set guy. So most of the people around me were much fitter. I also live in Vancouver, which is at sea level. So I'm not really used to the altitude. So altitude sickness, headaches, vomiting. And then also it really messed around in my head in the sense that maybe it's like the low oxygen levels. But I used to work super hard in the sense I was to hike 3, 4, 5 hours a day. And then you see the mountains, and the mountains are just exactly where they were 5 hours ago. And so you're working so hard, you're sweating, you're drenched, and you're like, when is this going to stop? And then the mountains are still there. And then it just kind of makes you feel really small in the sense that these mountains have been around for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, and they will be here for tens of thousands of years. So your problems and your issues are just a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. So it's not really a big deal. So when I came back, I found a renewed sense of purpose, and then I had so many ideas. I was like, I was like really bullish on what can we do, and then this I would say in hindsight, brilliant idea came to me, which is why don't we use our own data to figure out where the traction is and go do an outreach to them and see what's up, so you actually can understand the industry, understand the use cases, because this is actual usage. Literally, the blockchain captures all of those use cases. And so we were early to the DeFi game. So we started doing DeFi in 2019, like DeFi data, before DeFi was a thing.
Yeah.
And we started doing NFTs before NFTs were a thing. And so that's how we were able to basically build this flywheel where this base data is useful for whatever use case. So that's an example which I think I've just come back from a retreat where we had a guest lecturer from another mountaineer who's done the 7 summits. And he said, it's not failure if you don't give up. Think of it as deferred success, or you're in the process of succeeding. So if you don't succeed today, then you'll succeed tomorrow. So don't call it a failure at the end of today. So it's only a failure if you give up. So I think startups are generally a mental game. I think now as we're entering a bull market, the human psychology plays mind games with us all. You always think that other coins are pumping. You wish you had been there. You wish you had bought Bitcoin when it was like $16 or $10, whatever. But I think the answer is that you need to have conviction. You need to place the bets and be accepting of yourself and what's in front of you.
It's good that you managed to zoom out and really think about it. And I see it like there's the curse of being too early, where you feel like you've exhausted all the options, and then if you do give up, then it ends up playing out. You were right. You were just too early. And I know some cases in crypto that actually went and give up. So it's actually great that you stick to it.
I have another story there. So that was 2019. We started to see early traction. And, we were bootstrapped until then. So, we had poured all of our savings into this company. Well, not company, project at that time, because there was no revenue, nothing, no traction. And so 2020, we started to see something very early. We were starting to see DeFi projects getting funded, started to see like MakerDAO get their traction. And then I said, okay, now is a good time to go raise capital, right? Because we have something. And at least at a seed stage, you can find other people who are prospectors and want to be in for the journey. Maybe it's not going to be a VC fundable, scalable company because the total addressable market is small, but let's find co-conspirators or people for the journey. And so we went out and did a raise for a little seed round and got a term sheet. And this was second week of March. And then COVID hit and the lockdowns happened. And the guy who had the term sheet blocked me on Telegram. And so I guess that evaporated, and then my co-founder is like, when is the money coming in? When are we going to get paid? And I'm like, I'm sorry to say this, but there's no money, so we have to continue to bootstrap, continue to find creative ways to continue going. And that's when I realized. Now I had the conviction. I'd just come back from the base camp, and I'm hyper bullish, irrationally bullish. So let's keep going. So I said, okay, one solution here is to make the company profitable. Make the company profitable, then you don't need outside money. And so I remember this was March 16, when Bitcoin dropped 40%. That's called Black Thursday. The lockdowns happened. The stock market crashed. But there are still people who are, if the problem is real, the customers will pay, right? It's not like a nice to have. It's a genuine hair on fire problem. So went out, hustled hard, and made the company profitable by this would have been May 2020. And in that 3 months, three or four of our biggest competitors with the most hype, they all folded. I'm not kidding you. They all folded. They got acquired by Coinbase. They got acquired or they shut down the company and stopped because they couldn't see the future.
Wow.
And if those companies had continued, had the conviction, then there would be no Covalent today, because those companies are all well funded. Those companies all had the hype. Those companies were from San Francisco or London, so they were from tier 1 startup companies. We are from Vancouver. There's some good companies in Vancouver, but it's not a San Francisco. It's not a New York. And so it just shows you that sometimes not just being early and giving up is a lot of factors go into this. So I look back and maybe it was crazy, but I'm happy with the choices that I made.
It's just the craziness of a founder, and honestly, just this conviction that came out of that experience, going in the mountains, that is so powerful, because once you have that, literally nothing can stop you. So it's really impressive to see, and I think that also then gets stuck with you. Forever, anything can happen in crypto or any other thing that you go on and do with your life. You know that this is how it plays out. You just stick to it, and eventually things work out. It's really hard for someone that hasn't experienced it. It's very easy to give up on projects. Did you see a lot of people at that time giving up, even outside of data?
Generally, I think cryptos have the graveyard is full of bones. Lots of failed projects. Lots of people who try something and don't want to continue going. Some cases they're unfortunately rug pulls. So there's a lot of failed attempts. But you know what they say? Your true friends are friends you make in a bear market. So I continue to hang out with people, either online or in real life, with friends I made in 2019, 2020. And those guys continue to ship, continue to be excited about the industry, continue to be optimistic. And so, there'll always be, this, people who come and go. I think they're called tourists. But they're the veterans with the battle scars. That's a different tier.
Yeah, the ones that come when the market is up and leave when it's down.
Should I buy Cardano?
Buy Cardano. Oh, wow. I think that I find this really interesting because my experience is more like marketing and social media and so on. So having access to information is always really powerful. I love seeing numbers, even like, health stuff. So I do like that there's data available for people to track things. I like that idea. Is there going to be more data or different types of data available in the future? Like, give me an idea where we're at and where is it going?
Absolutely. So the answer is, undoubtedly, there's going to be volumes of more data in the world. And let me give you a Web 2 traditional background and a Web 3 status quo check update.
Okay.
So let's take Web 3. Web 3, the issue right now is Ethereum is basically clogged. So I'll take Ethereum as an example. So this is why we've had situations where it was difficult to get your transactions on Ethereum. On the L1, it's just congested, right? Simple physics. And so now Ethereum has brought up a lot of innovations like the roll-up-centric roadmap where you have like Optimism and Arbitrum. So you basically offload the execution and then you settle the end of the execution back on the L1. So now you have maybe 24 roll-ups. So you have ZK Sync, you have Arbitrum, you have Optimism. Polygon is a pseudo L2. You have all the ZK EVMs like Linea, Scroll, Tyco. The list keeps going on. You have Mega ETH, there's a lot of appetite for, roll-ups. What's happening with all these roll-ups is that your execution becomes basically unbounded. Mm-hmm. So all of that is data. So it's actually true to call it the world computer. So the amount of data, if you take just Covalent, for example, we started with just Ethereum, then we added Polygon, then we added BNB chain, and today we are at 200 chains, right? And I think we've just scratched the surface of what's possible. So the faster these blockchains become, the more data you capture. So that is one point. The second point is that one of the scary things about traditional data infrastructure is that we've actually run out of data to train LLMs.
Oh,
this
really?
is a surprising thing. So the stats here are very interesting. So about 90% of the data that we have in this world was generated in the last 5 years or so, right? So the data generation aspect is exponentially growing, right? There's just more data, like more social, just how our lives, like you just brought up the example of health. That's data. So there's data collected everywhere. There's data generated everywhere. But even all of data is not enough to train an LLM. You just run out of data. Like we've reached the capacity. So now you need synthetic.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's insane. So you need synthetic data generation now. So data that didn't exist in the first place. So now that's a next level of data. So if you think you're overwhelmed with data today, in a few years, there'll be like orders of magnitude. So these two dimensions, if you compound them, there's no bounds to how much data there is in the world.
Give me an example of synthetic data.
So an example, like maybe from a use case perspective, synthetic data is fake data, but still follows the same statistical parameters of the original data set. So for example, you have health data. Let's say people with Parkinson's, for example. I'm just making this up. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to like load up your Parkinson's data into some, American corporation's like website. It's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so what you do is you generate another fake data set that's not real, that follows the same statistical properties of that initial data set. And then you use that to train the LLM or use it for downstream purposes. So that's an example of synthetic data. Mm-hmm. And so now you're seeing that that is for privacy reasons. So you don't disclose the actual names and genders and nothing is personally identifiable. But you can include AI music in this bracket, right? Music that didn't exist. That's synthetic data. There's I've seen comedy scripts, stand-up comedy that is synthetically generated that didn't exist before.
Okay.
Now this podcast, there are AI programs that converts our entire conversation into Espanol, and you don't even know the difference. It even has the same annotations that I have in my voice and your voice. So that's synthetic data that didn't exist in the first place. So these are all examples of synthetic data that it's all like generative AI. So it didn't exist.
Generative. Yeah. Okay, I get it. Is there anything exciting coming up?
Absolutely. So every day is exciting. So there's a couple of things that I'm not going to disclose the exact items, but I'll tell you like why I'm very excited about this and our community is very excited about this. The first is we've partnered with a tier 1 exchange to run the Covalent infrastructure. So if you just take a step back and understand what's happening in the space, these tier 1 exchanges are now looking for an exit hatch. Because the regulatory environment, there's like Trump is in power and so on, but it's not the same everywhere. So what that means is that every time you have user assets and user balances on a centralized database, a government entity can come and confiscate that. So they're all having now a blockchain to put user assets. So if you take Binance, for example, has the BNB chain. If you look at Coinbase, for example, has the Base chain. If you look at Crypto.com, has the Kronos chain. If you look at Kraken, they just announced the Ink chain. So these guys are all doubling down on the DeFi use cases and the on-chain use cases, just in case, there's some kind of issue with their centralized business, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a backup plan because they don't want to have like user assets be confiscated. We've partnered with a tier 1 exchange, and that exchange is so excited by the vision of Covalent that they're now running Covalent infrastructure. So that announcement should come out in the next 10 days or so. So I'm very excited about that. Another announcement I'm very excited about is another, let's say, one of the biggest companies in the world. We've partnered with them to resell the Covalent structured data through their marketplace.
Okay.
So that's an exciting thing because the addressable market on this like marketplace is orders of magnitude bigger than what you see in Web3. So that's also super exciting. But yeah.
For everyone watching, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So I am Ganesh on Twitter and Telegram. So GANE5H. So instead of the S, use a H. And you can find Covalent on Twitter, Covalent HQ. Our website is covalenthq.com. Generally, we're approachable. So, shoot me a message if you want to chat anything about data or crypto or startups or adventure.
Ganesh, it's been a delightful conversation. Thank you.
Mia, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you.